Today is from LUCA to ALOHA. This is the backstory of life on Earth. And I want to start with the Kumulipo. The Kumulipo is the Hawaiian creation chant. Today we're going to talk about from LUCA to ALOHA. Now let me tell you who LUCA was. LUCA is the last universal common ancestor. So if you ask who our common ancestor is, it's an ape. But if you look at all of life on Earth and ask who their last universal common ancestor was, it's all of us. It turns out to be LUCA from 4 billion years ago. It was a single cell from 4 billion years ago that was created in the oceans and evolved into all life on Earth. So if you look at the entire spectrum of all life on Earth, there's the bacteria, there's archaea. Archaea are these probably the very first life on Earth. This is life that formed from the hot vents of the ocean floor. And then there's the eukaryotes. The eukaryotes are the plants, fungi, and animals. They're cells that have nuclei with DNA in it. These other cells do not have nuclei, but they do have DNA. So this has been an unbroken chain of life for 4 billion years from the beginning of LUCA. This is a photograph I took of a dividing connective tissue cell from a mouse when I was a graduate student. And you can see the cell dividing, and down on the left here, on the left bottom, you can see another one dividing. This cell has not stopped dividing for 4 billion years, and that cell LUCA is in all of us right now, dividing, has not stopped dividing. In us, there's millions of cells in you right now dividing that are an unbroken chain from LUCA. So I want to talk today about the connections between science, nature, and Hawaiian culture. Many of you know that Hawaiian knowledge of astronomy and navigation is legendary. They knew more about astronomy and navigation than anyone in the world, by far. The Pacific Islanders navigated the entire stretch of the Pacific Ocean, all the way to the Easter Islands. Past the Easter Islands is strong evidence shown that they were in South America before 1200, before any Westerners ever came there. They had trade routes back and forth. They knew exactly how to get from one place to the other. They had the navigation thing down pat. 8,000 miles of the Pacific Ocean. So I want to get back to the Kumulipo for a minute. Kumu means the source, the root, the teacher. So I am a substitute teacher. I have the honor and pleasure to be a substitute teacher at Kamehameha schools. And they call me Kumu because that's what teachers are called. So all the teachers there are called Kumu. I'm Kumu Greenberg. Kumu Anthony is in the audience here. Kumu Sora is in the audience. Some of the Kumus from the Kamehameha schools are here. Thank you for coming. And Lipo means deep darkness, a bottomless darkness. And that is, in fact, how our universe started. So it begins in darkness, and it progresses through the birth of the sea creatures, and through the land creatures and the plants, and finally to human beings and the chiefs and alihi. Follows the ancestry of the Hawaiian people. The Kumulipo story is not only a story of creation, it's a story of evolution as well. And that's an important point that I want to make. And this is long before Darwin ever came up with the idea of evolution. The Hawaiians knew this. And why do they know this? They could see land being formed in front of their eyes. And not only that, they could see volcanoes raising up into the sky, they can see them going extinct, and they can see them sink back down into the ocean. They saw that land was not fixed, like Westerners thought. Everything was movable, and they were part of it. They were from the land and part of the land. So what actually was happening here is, if you look at the Hawaiian Islands, if you take a cross-section down through the earth, you know, most of the earth is molten, is liquid. There's a sheet, a crust along the top. In this case, the crust is the ocean floor, the Pacific Ocean floor, called the ocean plate, the Pacific plate. It's a tectonic plate. That plate is moving in the direction of that white arrow. And it's moving over a hot spot. So if you look a little closer here, you can see there's a hot spot that comes up through the mantle, and that's what caused all of the Hawaiian Islands were created by this plate moving across the hot spot. It's still active now. Kilauea is the most active volcano in the world. And you can see just south of that, there's Loihi. Loihi is an island that's being formed right now from this hot spot. You'll have to wait about 50,000 years before it breaks the surface, but it's there. And this is what it looks like. And it's continuously adding new land, which will eventually become a new Hawaiian island. Actually, it's going to merge with the large Hawaiian island eventually. So I want to go back to the very beginning. So 4.5 billion years ago, our sun ignited. And when it did, it implodes and explodes. And the stuff that's left off is left gas, dust, pebbles, sand, and that stuff becomes the planets and the moon, and moons and asteroids and all that other stuff that hangs around in our solar system. So this is the interesting thing about life on Earth. Life on Earth was formed from non-living objects, from water, dust, gas, comets, lightning. That's what the Earth looked like 4 billion years ago. It was not a very hospitable place. These organic molecules started to form in the early ocean. And these molecules, these are molecules that did things. These are molecules that were thousands of amino acids long, that were proteins and had shapes, and they literally had functions. These little tiny molecules did things. And they came together, hundreds of these organic molecules came together to work together to create LUCA, the first cell. LUCA had to do several things. First of all, LUCA had to be able to reproduce and survive. And this is how it did it. The master plan is coded in DNA and RNA. DNA and RNA are self-replicating molecules. They can copy themselves. Without that, there would not be life on Earth. If you didn't have molecules that could copy themselves, there would be no such thing as life. There would be no reproduction. And this same molecule turns out to be the information molecule. It's the molecule that carries the ancestry and the heredity. Now, what else do you need? You need energy in the form of ATP. ATP are little molecular batteries that all life on Earth uses to do work, to do things, grow, eat, whatever. So how do you get the energy? You have to eat. You have to eat food, but there was no food. So these little molecules figured out how to make food. Pretty clever, huh? They took carbon dioxide and water out of thin air and sunlight. They turned it into glucose, food. And that glucose is stored energy. That's how all life on Earth gets its energy from. It's from glucose. So don't give sugar too bad of a rap, because we all need sugar, okay? It's stored solar energy. Another thing LUCA needed was a membrane, a cell membrane. A cell membrane is so important because that becomes you. That becomes an individual. There's an outside and an inside. This is for the first time there was an objective world and a subjective world. Before that, it was only objectivity. All of a sudden, there was me and them. The whole world changed once the membrane was formed. And the membrane, by the way, it's a lipid. It's a fat. And fats don't like water. Living environment is water-like. So this layer of fat separates the inside from the outside. And what it does is it also has to have some awareness and be able to respond to the real world. And it does that by having membrane receptors. So this membrane has these proteins stuck in them, and they're the eyes and the ears of the cell. They sense what's outside, and they tell the inside of the cell what's happening, and that tells the DNA what to tell the rest of the cell to do. That's a level of cellular awareness. Consciousness, living consciousness started with the cell. So LUCA had all these things, and there were other forms of life in the early ocean that formed but didn't survive. LUCA wasn't the only one. LUCA was the only one that survived, though. So these molecules came together into cells that could do work, that could actually do things. I want to bring a couple Hawaiian words into this. Lokahi is the value of teamwork. Lo means together, completeless. Kahi it means being one together. This is how cells work. All these little parts, all these literally thousands. By the way, a bacteria has 2,000 genes. All these little molecules working together to make one little simple bacteria work. LUCA needed one more thing to survive. The secret sauce was the ability to change and evolve. The other forms of life that were maybe on the Earth 4 billion years ago, they didn't have that secret sauce. They didn't evolve and change with the changing environment. At one point, the Earth was a snowball. At the beginning of this 4 billion years ago, the Earth was a complete volcano everywhere. So it needed the ability to change and evolve. So how did this all happen? Was there an orchestrator? Did it happen in the oceans? What is a zillion to one? Did it come from outer space? Was it intelligent design? Let's take a look at a couple of these. Orchestrator. Well, I think that, is there a spiritual dimension beyond what science can see? I don't think there's any question about that. Of course there is. And that realm we may never totally understand, because we're only a chain in an evolutionary scheme that will go much higher than what we can ever conceive of ourselves. Is it from the ocean? Yes, for sure. Life was formed in the ocean, no question about it. The first life was formed in these extremophiles and these hot vents, these volcanic vents under the ocean. Those are probably the first life forms. These are what they looked like, and they're still there. Were they from outer space? A lot of the material that made these molecules, that made life, came from outer space. So a year ago, NASA went up to an asteroid called Bennu and brought it back and analyzed it, and it turned out to have all the amino acids that life on Earth has, and left-handed. So when I say left-handed, an amino acid can be right-handed or left-handed, right? All of life on Earth only uses left-handed amino acids. It turns out the left-handed amino acids were all in this asteroid. It also had ammonia, which is important in creating organic material. And the most amazing thing, which has never been found before, is it had all the 5 nucleotides for DNA. These are the building blocks of DNA, was found in this asteroid. Now, was it intelligent design? Take a look at this. There was a guy called Rube Goldberg a long time ago who used to come up with these schemes of how to do something in the most complicated way possible. And this is the amazing, so if you wanted to raise a flag, boom, that's how you did it, okay? Well, it turns out that that's how biology is. It's absolutely amazing. So I said, life brings together carbon dioxide and oxygen and makes glucose. It's not voila, there's the glucose. No. There's dozens of enzymes involved. This is called the electron transport. Look, there's an electron that goes from one place to the next place to the next place to the next. It's just like a Rube Goldberg. There's dozens of molecules working together to finally make this glucose. Was that intelligent design? It would have been better if it just, voila, there's the glucose, right? So fossil evidence shows us that it's always continuously being redesigned. So that's a fact. The master plan evolved. That's what happened. Evolution was the secret sauce. The master plan, the DNA, evolved. And the way it worked was through mutation and natural selection. That's how evolution works. So mutation means that one of these little strands of DNA can be just one of those letters. There's A, G, and C, and T, and they hook up with. If just one letter is gone, it can cause sickle cell anemia. Just one letter in that scheme. That's how sensitive the DNA is to any perturbations or mutations. You can have large mutations, small mutations. They can be positive or negative or have no effect at all, or they can be lethal. How do you know which one survives? Nature selects its natural environment. Nature, it's called natural selection. Nature is the one that selects the winner, basically, or the survivor. I'll give you an example. This is a peppered moth, pre-industrial England, where they had these peppered moths lived off the bark of these trees. And after the Industrial Revolution, the trees ended up getting covered with soot. And now, all of a sudden, the white peppered moths were picked off by the birds. But the ones that evolved black peppered moths, they survived. So this is how the environment selects the winner. And that's always changing. And that's why everything has to be in flux. There can't be just one thing that's designed and it never gets changed, because that will never have lasting power. It's not survival of the fittest at all. It's not the strongest that survive, nor the most intelligent. It's the one that's most adaptable to change. So, 3 billion years of only Single-celled microscopic organisms. That's kind of amazing when you think about it. And these are what some of these creatures look like. There's a radiolaria. This one is foraminifera. These are single-celled, this is a single-celled diatom that invented the geodesic dome about 2 billion years before Buckminster Fuller did. And look at these little guys. These are single-celled animals, protozoa. Unbelievable. 3 billion years, finally we get creation of multicellular life. I want to emphasize what a leap this was, and what a concept, because the DNA was always working to make a single cell survive, and all the energy was put into a single cell. Now all of a sudden, you got organisms made of many cells, and they had to communicate with one another, and they had to cooperate with one another. It totally changed. It's a game changer, and how it happened is a real miracle. But the first multicellular organisms were the coral polyp. And the reason I wanted to show you the coral polyp Cumulipo was because that's the first animal that's stated in the Cumulipo. And it was the first life form that you would have been able to see without a microscope. And the Hawaiians knew how important the coral was, because it created the habitat for all the other ocean life. And they knew that all life came from the ocean. This is line 15 through 28. So we first started to hear the first line up to 15, and that was the beginning of the coral. But look at this. They believe very strongly in evolution through generational changes. The starfish was born. His child, the small starfish, came forth. His child, the small sea cutter, came forth. The sea urchin. His child, the long spike. His child, the thin spike. And it goes on. The oyster. And it's all generational, one after the other. It's a definite statement of biological evolution. I just want to play this to you because it's a pretty cool little animation that they did at Kamehameha Schools.
lepe kana kikipuka hano kana havele o ka una na kana kikipuka hano ka makaya uli o ka upi kana kikipuka hano ka leho ka pu leho kana kikipuka.
So beautifully said. And if you look at embryos, you can see it. Look, if you look at, these are embryos of vertebrates, of all vertebrates, from fish, amphibians, all the way up to humans. Look, we all started the same. Human beings started with gill slits and a tail. The gill slits became the face, the tail became the feet. We all have the same ancestry. And the Hawaiians somehow knew this. So the miracle of multicellular life was cellular specialization. No longer was each cell looking out for itself only. It was looking out for the organism. So if you look at the human body or any multicellular organ, it's made of different specialized cell types. And every cell has a job to do for the good of the organism. This is lokahi at the extreme. This is how it all comes together. Alakai is another word which means leadership. And this comes from the DNA. And the way it works is the DNA can express genes in certain cells and not in other cells, and silence genes in certain cells and not other cells. So it only gives the plan, the DNA plan is only given to the cell that's doing that job, and that cell doesn't get any of the other information. How did that happen? How did DNA all of a sudden start to figure out that you could have multiple cells and give each one a job and not get it screwed up? So it orchestrates the behavior of all these different cell types. Look how powerful it is. It's unbelievable. It orchestrates every little detail. It's quite incredible. So each cell type takes on a specialized function. And so to begin with, they're all embryonic stem cells. That's the beginning. Right after there's the egg and the sperm, after a few divisions, they become embryonic stem cells. These cells don't yet have a special. All they do is they divide and divide and divide. And the first thing they do is they start to make skin. Because just like with a cell has to make a membrane, an organism has to cover itself with skin. So there's now an inside and an outside. There's an individual. that's different from the rest of the world. These are skin cells. Then you need heart cells to pump blood around. So these heart cells, they have only the information from the DNA that makes them heart cells. They don't use the information that makes them skin cells. Here's another example. Cells of the immune system. We have dozens of cells of the immune system because we're always being attacked by foreign, by bacteria, viruses, and all kinds of things. So you see this, there's a little white dot here. That's a bacteria there. And look, it grabs it, and it's going to eat it up. And just, that's happening all the time in our body right now. And these little cells are always cleaning it up. And we're getting stuff in our body all the time. And our immune system, these are memory lymphocytes. You see this cell on the bottom left? It's called a natural killer cell. It can kill virus-infected cells, and it can kill cancer cells. The two cells on the top that are moving more slowly, those are the memory lymphocytes that are waiting there to get infected by a particular substance that if they have the memory for that, they'll spring into action and clone themselves and get rid of that invader. Look, this is what happens when things go wrong, cancer cells. Cancer cells are no LUCA, no working together. It only takes a single cell that decides, I'm not going to do the job I'm supposed to do, and I'm just going to divide and divide and divide without being stopped. That's what cancer is. It's anarchism. It's not going with the program. It's not having ALOHA, not having LUCA. Now there's a bunch of nerve cells that maintain, especially in an organism like us, they maintain communication and memory. And if you look close at the ends of one of these nerve cells integrate a higher level of consciousness. So this is the tip of a nerve cell looking to make a connection. If you guys are listening to me and you learn something, one of these nerve cells is making a connection. If you remember it, that connection will be strong, and you'll remember it tomorrow and maybe a year from now, maybe 10 years from now. Some of these cells, these nerve cells, are totally amazing. These cells in the back of the head, this is called a Purkinje cell, and you see there's a cell body at the top and all these branches. Those branches connect with thousands of other nearby cells. So if you look closely at those branches, every one of those little dots there, that's a connection with another nerve cell. That's how dense these neural networks are. And it's these connections that allow someone like my friend Mira Feldman to play a piano concert for 1 hour without looking at music. It's these cells that do that, but she's got to really practice a lot to be able to do it. But if she does it a lot, all those nerve cells and connections are made, and voila, there it is, an hour of music without looking at the music. That's how powerful it is. This is human consciousness for us. It's totally unbelievable. Modern humans emerged. Now take a look at this. On the very left there, that's about 200,000 years ago. There was about 500,000 population of modern humans. And look what happened 100,000 years ago. It like fell off the cliff. We almost went completely extinct at 75,000 years ago. Why didn't we go extinct? What happened? Well, what happened was the Ice Age turned, Africa used to be really like Brazil. It used to be like South America. But it became arid because of the Ice Age 100,000 years ago. So all of a sudden, humans went from paradise to a desert pretty quickly. That put a big hit on the human race, and we almost went, and this Toba supereruption in Indonesia caused a nuclear winter for many years. So times were really tough. Times were so tough that only a small percentage of humans survived. The other humans died out, and the ones that survived have what scientists call the cooperation genes. So the humans that cooperated with one another to get out of this mess, they survived. And the ones that didn't, they died. They died out. So what are these genes? These cooperation, I like to call them the ALOHA genes, and I'm going to tell you why. Because the cooperative behavior that evolved biologically is really what's expressed culturally in the Hawaiian world. So let's take a look at this again. All of a sudden, they went from almost going extinct to, what do we have, 8 billion now or something like that? Unbelievable. Human 2.0. This is when it happened 75,000 years ago. We became humans 2.0 because of these genes. I'm going to tell you a little about these genes. One was the FOXP2 gene, which involved in speech and language and complex communication. Now, before that, it was more like sign language and grunts and groans. Now, all of a sudden, we could actually produce language that other people could understand, concepts, complex concepts. That changed everything because it allowed for storytelling. We're storytellers. That's what I'm doing here. We were storytellers and teachers. The teacher thing was huge because now you could teach somebody else in the tribe or the tribe next to you about something that would be beneficial for them. So this language ability changed everything. This is humans 2.0. It allowed for abstract thinking and symbolic behavior. This is some little piece of stone 75,000 years ago. What was this person thinking? Was it some kind of form of mathematics or keeping track of his herds, or I don't know what it was. But abstract thinking and symbolic behaviors and art started coming, and burial practices started happening that had never happened before. And another gene, there's 3 genes I want to talk about, is the oxytocin receptor gene. That affects social bonding, trust, and empathy. This is the gene that is the essence of aloha. This is where we get our aloha from, is this gene, part of it. And so by the way, this all happened 75,000 years ago. Dance and music came about. None of this was there before. Art came about. And the arginine vasopressin receptor 1A gene was involved in social behavior and pair bonding. Now all of a sudden we had so much to talk about and teach that it took a longer time to raise our children because we had to teach them more to survive. We developed sophisticated hunting strategies and we put them as art. So these were teaching tools as well as strategies. In this one, it's showing how one of the strategies is you get a whole bunch of people and you scare the animal into a box canyon and then you get them. And look at this, bow and arrow. What do you think? Bow and arrow was invented 75,000 years ago and it spread everywhere. Everybody all of a sudden had it. Why? Because there were people who could speak and teach other people. And there was trading going on. Trading changed everything. Because of these genes, people became friendly and they went out trading beyond their local group. Lokahi is such an important concept for how life on Earth evolved and how life on Earth will continue to evolve. Human collective consciousness. Look at what people started to do. I'm here, this is me. This is who I am. This is the first art, showing who they are. Writing came into being, and now teaching could really be spread. And then with the printing press, people started to read, and people could learn all kinds of things. And then the internet, and now a lot of us stopped reading. But there you go. Now, this is the amazing thing to me. You see this thing here? It still amazes me. All of human collective consciousness is right here in this phone. How amazing is that? Collective consciousness is so powerful. What is AI going to do? In medicine, it's going to be very, very powerful. It already is. There's no question with drug discovery, treatment, and diagnosis, it already is better than doctors. In education, it's going to completely change education. You know, I'm a teacher. I give talks, you think, oh, does anybody have a question? No, the students don't have a question because they're embarrassed to ask a question in front of people, right? If they're sitting in front of a computer and the computer says, what question do you have? By asking that question, the computer is going to know exactly what he knows and doesn't know. And this is going to change the way people learn. They're going to learn at their own rate, at their own pace, with their own abilities. You know, we talked about natural selection. Well, there's also artificial selection. Artificial selection started about 10,000 years ago with farming and ranching. You know, we breed, right? Breeding has been going on for a long time. That's artificial selection. But what's going to happen with artificial selection when it's in a petri dish, when it's with CRISPR, and which is an editing technique that allows you to do amazing editing of genes. It allows you to do almost anything. So what we need going ahead is a code of values. I don't think there's any question. To get this code of values, we have to cherish our humanity. We have to have meaningful work and meaningful play. We're storytellers. We're storytellers, we're teachers, we're about music and dance. We need to compete in sports, not in war. We have to cherish our humanity. This is the most important thing. There's a word, a Hawaiian word, eola, means to live on or to thrive. How do we live on and thrive? I have a formula. Being a scientist, I got to give you one formula. Alakai plus lokahi equals eola. This means that leadership plus teamwork, that's how you're going to thrive. That's a formula for thriving. That's how a single cell thrives. That's how a multicellular organism thrives. That's how a species thrives, a society, and a planet. I really believe that the values of Aloha could be a universal code of values, because there isn't the sort of moral and ethical aspects. It's just how to be human. It's about how to be a good human being. And we're gonna end with this little video that Tom made of some Hawaiian words. And you'll see the definitions. These aren't the total definitions of them. There are different definitions of these words. The real definition of these words is what they mean in your heart and your head and your memory. That's what these words really mean. Mahalo. Mahalo.
Again, let's hear it for Dr. Gary Greenberg. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mahalo. Mahalo.